Boom, what's up everyone? Welcome to Simulation. I'm your host, Alan Sakyan. Very excited to be talking about the power of being open. We have Casey Lai joining us. What's up?
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming on the
Happy
program.
to be here. Thanks for having me.
Super excited.
I'm happy to finally be recognized as one of the greatest minds of our time.
Yes.
So, yes, I appreciate the invitation to be here.
Yes, this is a very important conversation we're about to have. Excited to dive into depth with you. Casey's background, writer, comedian, the host of the Gay Power Happy Hour.
Gay Power Half Hour.
Gay Power Half Hour podcast.
Yeah.
And that link's below. Gay Power Half Hour. And you guys have had like 150 episodes almost?
We've put out about 140 episodes at this point. We're pushing 150.
Really good, yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. And it's a podcast with one of my best friends who is a drag queen, and I am a comedian, and we both air our damage and our friendship and our views on what is going on in the world. And I think, you know, you don't think that a gay comedian and a drag queen are the people you want to hear opinions on the issues of the day, but actually you do.
Yeah, and so that's roaring hot, and then, you know, this is a really important episode because this power of being open is so crucial to talk about. I'm excited to get into that with you. You know, you just started kind of telling us a bit about kind of, you know, you and your partner on the podcast, as well as, you know, give this to us. We like to talk about this state of humanity, your kind of synthesis on what's going on in our world. So tell us what you're thinking.
Sure. Well, I think that any gay person would agree. Any gay person who is out, I think, would agree that we all grow up with a facade or behind a facade, and I think that everyone does that in a way. You know, everyone kind of creates the person they want to be, but I think that gay people are very aware of it because we're kind of growing up in this dual existence where there's the internal person that we are and then the external person that we present, and those two things can be very different. I think much more so than a lot of other people, because it's a matter of self-protection and preservation that we grow up with that. And so what I think is interesting is when you start shedding it, when you start getting out of it, you do realize that I think it makes you more hyper aware of the facade in general, you know? And so like it gives kind of my like superpower to be able to see when someone is being real or is not being real, because I know their tells, because I lived it, you know, and I'm not an academic expert by any means on like things like shame and stigma and the closet and sexuality in general, but I have lived all of these things, and so my experience meshed with the experience of all of these people in my life who have had similar experiences gives me, I think, a pretty good perspective on how all of that works.
Do you have gaydar?
We all have gaydar. All gays have gaydar, because what gaydar is, I love that question, actually, what gaydar is a way of figuring out others in your tribe, you know, and it had to develop very subtly, you know, these modes of communication. So what gaydar is, I mean, of course there are people who are kind of a bit more like fabulous, you know, and so as a result they're easier to read, you know, but people are always asking me, oh, is this person gay or is that person gay? And to me it's all about this lingering eye contact between two men. Like you can see there's an eye contact thing that goes on, and it happens on the street. It's kind of called like cruising, but it really is just like there's this like extra second or so. It's almost like imperceptible to straights, but like to me that's what gaydar is. And I used to be really interested in that, and like if someone was hiding their sexuality. Now I don't care as much because you know, I've come to learn that sexuality is very much a person's own thing, and I also have come to believe much more in the wide breadth of the sexuality spectrum, which I think especially gay men struggled believing for a long time, because was always just wishful thinking. And I think, I mean, sexuality, I really believe this. I feel like sexuality and the universe are the two great unknowns, two things that we know a lot about, but there are just some things about it that are still completely unexplained. You know, like nature versus nurture is not a fair question, because there is, you know, and there are plenty of people on the side that it's completely innate and completely born in, who then you see things that you know, fly in the face of all of that research. You know, it's absolutely true. People, you know, I mean, I know women who don't come out and didn't even realize that they had attraction to women until they were well into their lives, you know, and had families and kids and never even thought about it. And you know, there's plenty of trauma that goes into the determination of one's sexuality that can, you know, and then there are people who are just born gay as fuck. You know, sorry for my language.
No, you can swear as much as you'd like. Casey, let's unpack this asymmetry more, because it is so difficult to carry a facade because of cultural pressures. And this power of being open shatters that facade. So tell us about the asymmetry and then shattering through that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I think from my personal experience, the overwhelming intensity with which hiding my sexuality, the energy that went into hiding my sexuality for so long was all-encompassing. And I really think that it kept me from using my brain in much more productive ways, you know, because I was seeking I was constantly on edge, you know, I was constantly on edge. And it took me a long time to overcome that feeling. You know, I grew up in a way in which I just didn't trust ever my own instincts, because I knew that my instincts could give away my sexuality. And I wasn't raised in an incredibly, by any means, like repressive or oppressive like state. You know, I was raised Roman Catholic, but not like very dogmatic, you know, and not very like strict by any means. But all of those things creep into you, and just by growing up gay in society, in almost all societies, you're being told that you're wrong. You're being told that you're bad. You're being told that you're going to hell. You're being told that your life is going to be harder. All of these things. So like, and you're a child. You know, I mean, I became aware of my sexuality at puberty, you know, so like 11 and 12, you know, and so your hormones are raging, and then on top of that, you have all of this pressure from society telling you that you are inherently wrong. So
yeah, that's why I'm gonna just keep my stuff in the closet.
Well,
I'll never come out.
Yeah,
never.
And that might work for you, and that might work for some. But you know, I mean, what it does for a lot of people, and especially kids, is it drives them to contemplate suicide, because that's the easiest out. You know, and so and that's why rates of suicide still to this day for LGBT community is staggeringly high, because it's shame, it's stigma, and it's the pressures of society, you know, and then you put them all on you. So not only are you dealing with those pressures, you're dealing with your own internalized hate of all of that. So it's a lot to deal with, and it's something that I didn't fully really realize and didn't like unpack the power of all of that and its negative consequences until recently. And I'm also HIV positive, which added a whole nother layer of shame, a whole nother layer of stigma, and actually put me back into a closet in my 20s, where I was just kind of like raring to get out of the one that I had been in for so long, you know, and I was out. And so when I became positive, it just kind of like put me down on this spiral of like, well, what was all the work for? Because now I'm just back in a worse scenario. And in this day and age, if you're HIV positive and you live in a, you know, like, I mean, and if you live in a place where you have access to like medication and all that, you're actually physically going to be fine. And so the emotional toll is actually one that can cause a lot more damage, because you have now become, in the eyes of society, the bad gay, the bad queer, the queer that bears the consequences of the sin, and the sin is the gay sex, you know. So so then I had to deal with all of that, and so I had to like power through that, and then it took me a while to be open with that. So I'm also a comedian, and I started doing comedy in my mid-20s, and I was determined to be an out gay person from the get-go. Not everyone makes that determination. I was determined to be. I didn't know how to do it any other way. I wanted to be open about who I was. And then I became positive, and I didn't know how to make that funny, you know? So it took me a while to do that, but now I do, and it's hilarious. But it's also what I didn't realize was the process of coming out as a gay HIV positive man, while it added on layers of stigma coming from people towards me, it started to, like, it allowed me to kind of shed the shame and also build up this like armor against the like stigmatization coming at me. And it has made me a lot stronger as a performer, but also as a person. And from what I do creatively, which is very personal, like all of that is integrated into being, I think, you know, a really, or at least having a really interesting perspective on the way that like the world is working. You know, nothing can really, I'm not scared of what can take me down, because I think this is the point, is because I'm so open about who I am.
Yep. Okay, so let's go with this expression of self being able to be maximally present with everyone. So enabling a social fabric that allows the maximal presence of one's true self. Because like you said, the rates of depression or the ranks of suicide in LGBTQ, not cool, needs to be a stronger social fabric of enabling people to be who they are. And then also you talk about how getting through these severe walls of adversity, how you found your greatest treasures in life on the other side of them. That seems to be a reoccurring theme with the guests that we feature.
Sure.
So talk about those.
Well, I think it's so interesting to me to live in this day and age and watch politics unfold. And because it's full of people with deep, dark secrets who are ambitious, narcissistic, whatever, enough to want to climb the ranks of the political ladder to be in charge of things. You know, power is very alluring, all of that stuff. But to know that they're living this existence where someone might find out that deep, dark secret, and like to know that, to be wondering when and if that's going to happen. I mean, currently we're watching what's happening in Virginia with the governor who had like a blackface picture come out, and then the lieutenant governor has sexual assault allegations following him now, and then the attorney general, who is the third in line, has blackface pictures coming out, and like, I'm bringing this up because I find that I found this whole new power of and this whole new strength in not worrying what other people might know about me, you know, and not worrying what might come out about me, or not being in a crowd and wondering if someone is thinking this about me or that about me, you know, I'm just amazed at how many people. We all have secrets, you know. We all have things, but like, I know how corrupting those things can be on a mind, which is why I'm just watching like politics full of all of these like corrupted brains, like seeking power, and we continue to just like vote for them and allow it to be. It's all very. It's scary to me and staggering to me because, you know, like,
it's an interesting way to put it, because that's in a sense that can explain some of the greatest traumas and turmoils of our world, is this desire to be in control of other people, rather than figuring out how to get to the root of human and help humans flourish from inside. And
sure. Yeah. Well, it allows and also like getting through these things allows your empathy levels to grow.
Yes.
And because when you're not as concerned about what other people are thinking about you. You can put more concern on like what's going on with other people. And also, when you go through hard things and you come out on the other side of those hard things, you hopefully have an understanding of what other people are going through. And I think all of that has been, you know, these are all things that I've realized in my work, in my journey through it all. Your questions were so smart and well articulated that I don't remember all of them. So
your story is so good that there's so many good questions to ask. Let's take us to, because you hit kind of the answers to those two. Now take us to, there are other people that have these adversities that are so overwhelming, and then you got hit with a second one, which was HIV positive. Now teach us about how you said you're still able to stay physically healthy.
Yeah.
So teach us about how to be able to stay physically healthy in that regard, and then the preventative healthcare for that.
Sure.
Even, and then after that, teach us about how for those that may be experiencing similar emotional turmoil,
Sure.
how they can break through that.
And I thank you for asking that, because I think that kind of what gets lost in the idea that like HIV is not something that's killing people anymore is why that is, you know, and it has to do with the fact that the science is great. And I take, you know, I've been lucky, you know, I was lucky to get it in a time when the medication worked. And it's been 10 years since I've been positive, and I started medication relatively soon after finding out that I was. And I have been completely, I mean, I've been very healthy ever since. I take care of myself for the most part, you know, I mean, I eat well and I exercise, but I also like, you know, do the other things that comics do, and drink and smoke and hang out, you know, more than I should. But I eat better than most straight comics.
Because you have to stay fabulous.
I drink and smoke and hang out too.
Yeah, we drink and smoke and hang out,
And
which
I'm not
is
even
like
funny.
so far I would beg to differ. But after this, we should drink and smoke and hang out.
Oh, here we go. Oh, here we go. I told you.
Yeah.
Well, you only gay if you love the guy.
I you know, do all of that. And that I'm lucky. Other people have more complications, and it's still, I'm not saying that HIV is something that's great and you should have, but I am saying that it is very different than what it was. And so physically, the medication is what keeps me alive. Then there's also something, because the medication, it keeps the HIV almost completely at bay in your body. And so what it does do is it creates this thing in your body, we call it undetectable, and it means that you have an undetectable level of the virus inside of you. So like when they draw your blood, like there are antibodies, which means that they can see that it's there, but there is no real sign of it, to the point that I can't transmit it. So the virus gets so subdued in your body, Whoa. And the levels are so low in your blood and your semen that you I mean the research is pretty conclusive that if you are medicated to the point of undetectable, you cannot transmit HIV. Then there's this drug that people can now take who are in, I mean, they're offering it to people in high-risk groups of for getting HIV. It's called PrEP. Truvada, I think, is its marketed name, and they're starting to actually market it. I think they marketed it on the Super Bowl or something like that. But that's a pill a day you can take
for preventative.
Preventative, you know, and that is seemingly very effective as well, not 100%, but very effective. And so all of that is great. And so like we're working towards the, you know, eradication of new transmissions and hopefully the eradication of the disease.
Period.
You know, there is a more cynical angle on that the drug companies have figured out a way to get all HIV and sexually stigmatized groups on a pill rather than getting a cure.
Well, sure. No, it's like cancer. Same thing. That's interesting.
You know?
That's terrible. And that's
it's a cynical way of looking at it.
I hope not. And I hope they do.
Well, interesting. It's the pharma lobby wanting to get hooked on a pill. It's a cynical way of looking at it, but at the same time, getting to the root rather than a Band-Aid is the most important thing.
Yeah, well, fuck Big Pharma.
Yeah, I mean, it's, Big Pharma keeps me alive. And that's how I have to look at it. And I do, like, I'm sympathetic to what Big Pharma is capable of doing for good and for humanity.
This is the nuance, Ron. Just
maybe not Big Pharma. No. But fuck big corporate industry that is doing its best to keep people at bay and make money off of their pain, for sure.
Yep.
But
the nuance there, like, is keeping you alive.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, like I'm alive because of the pill that I take that Gilead makes, and.
Shout out to their engineers.
Gilead, is that the?
Yeah.
I think that's the one that makes the drug that I take.
Yeah.
And so for sure, but also like, I think it's nuts that there isn't a cure for HIV after all of these years, and I think once they realized that they could keep everyone alive and on medication, it probably became more incentive to do that. I mean, that's the other part of it. I think that their bottom line is their motivator, and so, a bunch of non-dead queers is who are on their meds is a good thing for them. So that's one way to think about it.
The positive end of it, of course. I miss my uncles who got it early in its stage. And,
well, when we lost a generation and a half or 2 generations of gay men, of some of the most interesting, creative, intelligent. I mean, to list the minds that we lost through HIV is to go through, some of the people who should be on this show today. You know, I mean, it's still a great tragedy, but it's different now and it's better now. And so a couple things go from that. I mean, like, what I'm working on is, again, this destigmatization, because I think what's interesting is because it's so because people are living and the disease is so different, less people are talking about it, because it's, I think of it in 2 ways. One, it's still a rough conversation. It's a sexually transmitted disease. I mean, in the end, that is the thing that like makes it more stigmatized than cancer. Like if a young person gets cancer, there's still shame in sickness. I mean, that is a well established thought, there's a well-established thought in all of that like, why that exists. But as I like to say on stage or whatever, I mean, I got a disease in my butt, and like that, there's an added stigma that comes along with that. And you don't have to talk about it because you don't look like you're dying anymore. I mean, like, that was the thing, like people were talking about AIDS because people were like, everyone was just dying. All of a sudden, everyone was just getting sick and dying, and no one knew why. And then all of a sudden, everyone was. And then all of a sudden, it became so big that that the whole world was scared of it. So it started to. You had to start talking about it, and you couldn't avoid talking about it. And now you can avoid talking about it, which I think is very harmful for a variety of reasons. People are like, infections are still strong. And it's still going, and it's still happening.
Get tested frequently, please, especially if you're sexually active, and be very open about what's happening.
Yeah, and if you do find out that you're HIV positive, just know that you're going to be fine. And just know that you're only going to be fine if you know that you have it and you get treated.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you can transcend into a whole new level of like consciousness and understanding of the way that you are and the way that the world works. And my uncle, who is also a gay HIV positive man and has been for years and lived well past the time that he was supposed to die and is still living to this day, he recently said something to me about how HIV positive people, out gay HIV positive people are the most open people in the world. And while that is hard to prove empirically, I do think that there is something to be said for that, because you have overcome two different types of very society-scaring adversity. Like you have power through, and then what do you get like after that? Like I think that's like, what's the point of keeping up the facade after that?
Yeah.
Like you've already kind of labeled yourself as something that society is like skeptical of, but then you have a choice to either make that powerful or to like retreat again. And I think that like I think a lot of people who make the choice to come out as to be open about their status, then they kind of start to transcend.
We find so much of our life's most meaningful treasures on the other side of the traumas, and transcending those and getting through these walls of adversity. And this is a reoccurring theme, and I'm glad that you're pointing it out, and also you're pointing out the importance of science to help prolong life, and again, preventative healthcare, being open. This is very important, because if you took it to the sphere of even all the way up to of what we're experiencing with many people with greed and corruption and these extractive economic principles like rent seeking and things that are actually tremendously harming the middle class and the low SES. And so if people could get through some of those vulnerabilities and be open about their vulnerabilities and be more inclusive in many ways, that we could prosper more effectively.
I agree, and I think, going back to kind of like the title of like this episode, which is like the power of being open, I think if you, like looking at the Me Too movement, the openness of that, the honesty and openness is a threat to the power structure, and you see that, I think, most clearly recently with the Me Too movement, because as you're seeing, there are very few people in the established power structure who are not terrified by the Me Too movement, because they are, for the most part, straight men. And as a result of that, we have seen that straight men, no offense, have taken way too many liberties with the power that they have had. And so by opening up about that and posing this direct threat to their power through, we're not going to take this anymore, and you don't have the ability to exert that type of power on us anymore, there is this huge backlash, and the backlash is no more apparent than the current president of the United States, who is a very interesting example of humanity to me, because he lacks shame in a bad way. I don't think he has this like shame like receptors, so there's definitely something very unique about his brain, in that he doesn't feel that shame. So it's like a little bit of shame, I guess, is useful when it keeps you from the shame of being a shitty person, of being, of like being a sexual harasser and assaulter, of being just an unabashed user and abuser and liar. That is what we see with this person, I hate to be so political, because I want this to be for everyone, but like he kind of embodies this backlash against like openness and transparency and like acceptance of everyone and all things, because if you do that, then again, like the power structure that's been in place, especially in this country forever, is a direct threat, is directly threatened by all of that. So I think that's why it's so important for people to fucking stand up and be seen, you know, to like, to share their stories and connect on these things, because my experience is completely different from everyone else's experience, and but that doesn't. But by sharing this, I feel like people can relate on levels that you know, that have nothing to do with HIV or gayness in particular, but with like, you know, like with that adversity and overcoming that adversity and overcoming society's perceptions. Yeah, on the way things are supposed to be.
The movement is so powerful, and it's so interesting now seeing people willing to put themselves on the line to be vulnerable and to express themselves where things used to be bottled up.
Right.
So that in itself is power.
Right.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're saying, this power of being open.
Yeah.
And not having a facade. Is so crucial. It's like it's having a symmetry in life, because if your symmetry in your, and Nassim Taleb talks about this a lot, is that if your symmetry in your private life and your public life is symmetrical, you feel so much more in balance and in harmony. It feels so good.
100%. And I think, you know, I mean, with what I'm doing is, I mean, it's. I wasn't thinking of it as so much as symmetry as much as full integration in a way, and I'm not sure that that's totally the right thing that I need to be doing either. But it's where it's kind of the way that it has been moving, where the you know, the performance me and the private me, there aren't a lot of lines between them. There's not a big boundary between them, and I think the problem with that is that, like, then when you're putting yourself out there performatively, like, it is and whether you're accepted or rejected, it is a direct, it feels very much at your core, you know, it feels like it is the real you that they're accepting or rejecting, and so there's not a lot of safety in that. But I don't know, it just feels right for me to be the most me that I can be, like, on stage and in you know, while writing.
Be true to thyself.
Yes, to be true to thine own self, and that's what people want to see too. I mean, that's what people want to feel, and you know, I'm just there's so much negativity out there, and comedy can be really negative.
Let's transition.
Yeah.
Let's transition here, because you are able to express your life's journey, this power of being open, through comedy, through your writing, and other people do that as well. What would you say is your ethos of comedy, and then also what you see as being this positive ethos that comedy can bring to the light?
Yeah, you know, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's just so much to comedy and just comics, and there's been a lot of bad publicity with comedy of late because of Louis C.K. and a lot of you know, there's a dark side to comedy and comics, and that has to do with the fact that it takes a certain amount of damage to do what we do. And I think people, certain comics synthesize their damage in a way that it makes them more open, and it makes them more empathetic, and it makes them want to bring happiness to other people. And there's others who synthesize it in a way where that just makes them, like, darker and odder and weirder and strange people. And both is fine as long as no one's fucking assaulting anyone else, you know. Like, I'm fully supportive of all kinds of comedy. But you know, there are some huge pieces of shit in the comedy world, and there are some of the best people that I've ever met in my entire life in the comedy world. I think what I do is like entertainment. You know, I mean, I want people to feel good. I want people to feel good. I want people to be to laugh at things that they were that were completely unexpected, you know. And I also want people to kind of like connect with me and on things that are hard or bad or weird or dark, and then release some of those things, even if it's just for a moment or not. You know, I'm not a dark, even though my subject matter can be dark, I'm not a dark comic. You know, like, and I think that's been a interesting development for me, because I think I got as a young comic, I got labeled dirty and dark because of my subject matter, which was, you know, I think like, if you're going to talk about sex in any form, you're gonna be deemed a dirty comic, I think, you know. And I definitely pushed the boundaries of that as a younger comic, and sometimes I still do. I don't mind dirtiness if it's funny. I think that there's like, you know, you're poking the taboos, and I think that that's good. But I like to think of myself as, you know, I think I'm a smart comic. I think I take issues that people don't always want to talk about, and I find ways to make them funny, and I find ways to make them light, you know. And nothing makes me happier than watching people laugh at something that they know they shouldn't be laughing at, that they thought that they shouldn't be laughing at, you know, that they think they shouldn't be laughing at. And it's super fun because I'm good at it, you know, and I'm likable. I'm a good face for gay HIV positive comedy. Yeah. You know, because I'm over the pain part of it, you know. And that's, I think, something else that happens with comedy is comedians use it as catharsis, and they use it as therapy, and I'm like, there's actual therapy. Use actual therapy, you know. And because what is uncomfortable to watch on stage is someone still going through the cauldron of pain or issues surrounding whatever it is, because then it can still be sad or weird. And I'm not saying people shouldn't do that. You need to be able to do that to get to the next level. But like, don't always. Part of me is always like, just don't always synthesize your pain on stage in a comedy club. Yeah. But what do I, you know, I mean, then there's there's a big whole question of like, what is comedy? What is stand-up? You know, what does it have to be? And I still think that that old equation of tragedy plus time equals comedy still kind of exists and is real, because I think in the end, like, there's great performance about pain, there's great performance about you know, all of that stuff, but it's not always comedy, and sometimes it gets billed as such. But maybe I'm a purist, I don't know.
I'm resonating with the way that you're talking about this, because I think, you know, now that we've been hosting more and more comedians, I think it's becoming more and more clear that there's cool lessons to explore as a comedian with your time with an audience, and you can explore things like poking fun at the way that the 3,000 people at Davos were avoiding their taxes and talking about philanthropy the entire time.
Right.
And I think if you do that, then you can awaken people.
Yeah.
With that, then that can be a profound way to use comedy. But when you're doing this thing they call it punching down, where you're actually potentially hurting people and making people, you know, feel worse, and that and some people can laugh at that.
Yeah.
But so anyway, how do you feel about what I just said?
You know, like, if you are a comic, if you're listening and you want to get into comedy and you have all these really great jokes about trans people, consider maybe not doing them, you know, because unless it's about how great and interesting and how good of a story it must be to be born into a different gender than you are and overcoming all of that. Because like, and if not, because if you're just going to attack them, then you're just or you're gonna be like, I don't get it or whatever, or it's like blah blah blah, make fun of bathrooms and all that stuff. You are attacking one of the more marginalized groups in our society. And if that makes you feel good laughing at that, then check why that does. Why? Because it's easy. You know, it's easy, and you know, you might get a big group of people on your side with that. But is it doing anything for you, for your soul, or for the fucking society at best? No, it's not. And I think you know, for me, I can get negative. I'm not saying I'm just like super like happy, everyone's great kind of thing. I can get negative about the political power structure for sure, and I have very harsh things to say about specific people, and I have some unpolitically correct things to say about people, and I will push those boundaries as well as I see fit if I'm making an argument, if I can justify it with an argument in my brain. I mean, an example is I call Sarah Huckabee Sanders a fat, ugly Nazi in my act. And that is something that gets a rise out of liberals in not a good way, because it is attacking a woman for the way that she looks. And I am asking the question of if it's okay, because it's like, you know, people, you'll call this person a Nazi, but you won't call her fat. Like what, like why, or you want me to, you say it's okay to punch this person because they're a Nazi, but you can't criticize them for the way that they look. And I'm not saying that I have this answer to it, but I'm more posing the question of like, is it okay to do that? How do we fight in this way? And also, every word that she's uttering professionally in defense of Donald Trump is, in my mind, an attack on women. So when it comes to like this question, this is the question, is like, I'm not punching down, you know, but because she's a woman, a you know, historically marginalized figure in our society, especially a woman in power who is very easily attacked for their appearance and the way that they look, regardless of political perspective, am I punching up, or am I punching sideways? You know, I will not say that the press secretary of Donald Trump is someone who is below me, you know, that I'm punching down for. But it's to me, those are like interesting questions within comedy of what's okay or not. And I don't know if I have the
her,
answer
she's
on
a
that.
fat fucking Nazi.
Yeah, I mean that's how she is loathsome to me, you know. But I also don't want to be doing a joke that hurts other women because of what it is at its core. I don't believe that that's true, you know.
We have to be careful, because on the show we really we push to never dehumanize ever. And,
absolutely.
And so we have to, no matter what, even if it is someone that finds themselves in a position where they are doing some sort of malevolence, that like why
can't we dehumanize the non-humans, the ones that are lacking in that human spirit that we're all trying to hang on to and go forward? I don't for a minute tell me that there are non-humans among us. There's something about the human spirit that we need to latch on, and there's some that are not. They're just not humans. Well, when you say dehumanize, Sarah, she's not human.
May I finish this statement, please? This was going to go in that direction. So it's very important, as we aim to not dehumanize anybody, because we are doing our best to get behind their eyes and to see which environmental stimuli led them to have the belief systems that they do today. And when we do that process, we are identifying the sort of weirder, potentially more parasitic styles of environment that people can be exposed to, where their ethics don't evolve fast enough. And so it's a process of learning the structural malevolences and parasites and violences, the violences that prevent people from ethically evolving, that prevent them from maximally flourishing. That is why we do that process. And at the same time, however we solve, like you're saying, potentially through comedy or through this issue, I think it requires a big degree of empathy, a big dose of humility, and a big dose of being this better person, that I think if we can set that as an example.
You know, and I think, I mean, I think, you know, to be very Buddhist about it, like to not have these, to get rid of these negative thoughts, and to not air these negative thoughts, and to get to a point where you're not having, like where I see, again, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, or that where I see Sarah Huckabee Sanders or I see Donald Trump and I don't hate them. that hate, which I do have, I absolutely have hate for them for what they stand for, because they stand against what I see as like a path of truth and justice and righteousness. They're impediments to that, but I see them as human for sure. And actually, it was interesting you said the dehumanization part, because I think to call someone a Nazi in this day and age is almost to dehumanize them, and to also to set them up for attack and violence, because Nazis as a whole are one of the most loathsome human creatures who have ever existed,
And we must be also careful, because then that can also cause further polarization.
And 100%. 100%. And the polarization is, and right, you lose the ability to persuade someone if you start by calling them a Nazi.
Yeah, well, some people you can't persuade.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders, I agree. She is not someone. She has proved herself time and time again to be set in her ways and not see a way to persuade. And when it comes down to it, she thinks that I'm going to hell for who I am. And so it's like, where are we supposed to start at a common ground?
This may be an interesting common ground. Is I very much so identify myself as a free thinker, a maverick, independent, no labels, no labels. And so when I kind of am able to approach people who may be on a far side of this belief spectrum, that I come in with a big degree of humility and a big degree of asking lots of questions and getting to know them, building rapport with them.
Sure.
And then I slowly introduce them to how other people feel about reality. And then sometimes they go, And then when they do that, that's the first step towards empathy through other people. And then that right there can get people on these far polar spectrums to come one step more towards a place of empathizing.
And I agree with that. And I mean, I don't know how I've sounded in this, but I'm not set in my ways. And I'm not set in my like political ideologies either. I'm very open, and I'm very open to conversation. I would love to sit down and have conversation with people who see the world differently, and I do that, but from the way in which things and reality and truth are being manipulated at the highest levels of our power structure, their intentions are so bad. It feels like their intentions are so bad that I'm not sure how they can ever see my point of view. They live in a reality that is completely one in which I am the enemy, and so it's hard to. I don't see them as the enemy, unless, of course, it does come out that they have been manipulated or are manipulating things because of like a foreign power. Then that's straight up enemy. But
let me do our best, because I have a strong feeling that the way that we have plans to produce really powerful media, that I think we can get to a point where the hate is going to there's going to be an uprising of love.
And and this goes back. Open communication. There's power in open communication, and I love the idea of like the public intellectual being brought back into the sphere, because that has been lost and been replaced with the influencer, and the influencer is not presenting reality.
I'm here to tell the both of you that they're going to kill you, and I'm not here to agree with those statements anyway, okay?
I mean,
you fucking love this, love that. They hate, and they're going to kill you. I just wanted to let you know that. I can't watch The Handmaid's Tale and not like have this fucking I gotta get a gun like thought process. Blunt force trauma.
But that is
lead pipe to the head.
I do not believe that our society is just going to work itself out. I believe this is the weird part of history, like the last couple 100 years of America have been the blip in society. Normally it's much more devastating. Normally it's much more driven by pure self-interest, and not saying that America hasn't been for the last 100 years, but I mean, like we grew up in a time of feeling like things were going to work out, you know, that, and that's very unique to human history. And I think that we have to fight the dark forces that have aligned to create our current society, which is one that is based on closed-mindedness and not facts. And not love, you know. I mean, it's crazy. This current political climate has put my family, not my immediate family, but my extended family at odds. And you know, we used to be able to like not dwell too deeply, but things have become so intense and so polarized that the love has been replaced by fear and hate. And I'm willing to have conversations about it, but I'm not willing to have bullshit. This is the other thing. This is the other problem. The other problem with this is that the flip side of everything that I've been saying about, I don't have time to bullshit anymore. I don't have time to pretend. If you don't want to have a real conversation, like our interaction will be quick. You know, and if someone wants to have a real conversation about something that will quickly become about everything, then fucking call me up and we'll have that conversation.
And I think that the strategy that we take when we aim to have this nuanced discourse is so important. When we're coming in with this, like Ron says, with this lead pipe, and we know we want to strike,
right,
that's a huge problem.
But
when we come in more with, hey, I want to ask you some questions about your life and who you are. How did you even get here? And we learn about them. They see we're interested. We build rapport, and then we see how much, you know, that they open up, and then we're able to potentially explain some of the life circumstances we've come from and how we can bridge this gap. And that is not only between the political ideologies, but then that goes even further to people around the world. A lot of people don't realize what life is like when you still have to walk with a jerry can to a well and get water. Some people don't realize what it's like to live in more of an authoritarian country.
Oh, absolutely.
And so when we go through these processes of learning behind other people's eyes, and this is the style of media that we produce, that we're aiming to produce, that will bind people together as, again, if a big vaccine to all of human ignorance is big history, deep time. When you snap yourself out of this 10, 30, 50-year lifetime and you start looking at how civilization was built by 100 billion humans before us, that gains a sense of union, a unity, an empathy to how we all came here with plants and animals alike. And that's how I think, boom, that's a really good way to get people to come together.
No, I agree 100%, but what you can't have a conversation with is someone who doesn't believe a thing exists in the first place, you know? And I think that is what we are struggling with. Is there are a lot of people, I mean, there are a lot of people who don't believe that I have the right to exist the way that I want to exist. And I don't know, you know, and then 100% it's about showing them that that's not the right way, and that's not real. But it is not something that I think our social media structure and our entertainment structure is capable of dealing with. I think that you find the facts that suit your view, and then you get deeper ingrained, and like, you know, I mean, I think the things that I'm interested in is these people who have been in hate groups in various times of their life and then have come out of those.
Agreed.
Those those people are fascinating.
Fascinating. We need to give them the biggest megaphones.
That's exactly what I was going to say. These are the people who know how to get out of it, and they know the trap that it is.
Yes.
But instead of those people being president of the United States, we have a white nationalist sympathizer. I'm not saying he is one or not, but this goes back to briefly the governor of Virginia, who I just want to like touch on again because I'm really interested in this story. And
then I have a couple quick questions.
Sure. But it's it kind of looks like he's going to stay the governor when everyone was saying he's going to get pushed out, and that's because below him were two other people who have issues in their own right, and so it's just like, oh fuck, the Democratic Party is screwed there. But the only way that this can work out in a productive manner is if he's allowed the room to, once things calm down a little bit, because you know what he did is indefensibly racist. But what does he do? How does he use what he did as a way to teach the state and America and the rest of society, because all eyes are going to be him, on like redeeming yourself from that? Redemption is not something that we have yet figured out how to deal with in all of this time of the Me Too movement and the racist movement and the politically correct movement. Is there room for redemption? There absolutely is room for redemption, and we have to let it happen. And I know that an argument that I've been hearing, and I totally sympathize with, from African Americans, is a black man would not be given the time or the chance to redeem himself in that way in the society, and that is true. But this is the reality of the situation now. And if we can't allow people to give their honest thought process on the redemption. Ralph Northam has fucked it up because he has lied about, he said he was in the picture, then he said he wasn't in the picture, he said it was a different time and all that stuff. But you know what, that's human self-defense mechanisms coming out improperly. I mean, he's the governor, sure, he should be held to a higher standard, sure, but the guy below him has 2 allegations of sexual assault, and the guy below him has an allegation of blackface. Seems to me like a lot of people in this country in the 80s and 90s and beyond were painting their face black, and now they're hoping those pictures won't come out. What if, instead of condemning all of them for actions that they did 20 years ago, we use this as a way of stimulating a conversation of why people were doing that, why they thought it was okay, and why they don't have those feelings anymore. And if they do still have those feelings, how we can start overcoming and unwrapping and unraveling those feelings. It's about being open about it, because the shame of the, like I hate to be so, I'm not going to be so, it's not so simplistic as to say everyone is racist, but everyone has these inherent biases that we were raised in the society. If you're a white person who was raised in America, you have racism ingrained in you. You have it ingrained in you. And it is shameful to know that you are. And so, of course, you're going to say, no, I'm not racist. But if our leaders can start, rather than beating us over the head with race baiting, or rather than being completely whitewashed from the scene, you know, we can actually use them as examples of people in the society who hopefully want to do good things because they are running to be public servants. You know, if we can use them and their transgressions as examples of how we can move beyond it, then we have something, because otherwise we're just going to be stuck in this never-ending cycle. And also this like you know, French Revolutionary cycle, where if you're not pure enough from the beginning and till the end, then your head comes off. You know, and I'm not defending Ralph Northam, but I'm defending the idea of redemption as needed in our society. It needs to happen because we're all criminals.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
In one capacity or another, and from one perspective of another, we're all criminals.
You're touching on what I think is one of the most important conversations to have today, which is the path to redemption. Mm-hmm. Everyone has very weird and scary and hard to process baggage and trauma and mistakes. And if we can create a culture of vulnerability, the power of being open and being like, hey, my ethics have evolved.
Yeah.
If we can start making that like hashtag ethics evolved or evolution of ethics. Yeah, whatever it may be, that if we can make that happen, I think that is the power that we can walk around with. Okay, the couple questions on the way. I'm glad we talked redemption and ethics evolving. That was really good, and we got to figure that out, what that path is.
Yeah, agreed.
What is a core driving principle of your life?
A core driving principle of my life I mean, not to beat a dead horse here, but I mean, at this point, it's honesty. It has not been the driving principle for so much of my life. When you're lying about such a core thing of you for so long, little white lies start to kind of, they don't really matter, to you. It's like, who cares, if you lie about one little thing, because it took me a while to realize the power that being an honest person, had. And I just think at this point, that, and I mean empathy and honesty are the two core driving principles at this point in my life.
I love those.
Yeah.
And then, do you think we're in a simulation?
I would hope a simulation wouldn't be so racist. I honestly, that's like, I've always thought it's like I mean,
it's a lot of fucked up shit.
Yeah, if this is simulated, then boy, I'll tell you who doesn't think we're in a simulation. Fucking the oppressed, because it's easy to talk about if we're in a simulation, from Silicon Valley area, So it's like, oh yeah, that's nuts. No, but no, the downtrodden and the beaten and the oppressed and that's not a simulation,
Well, we have to learn, if such is the case, we need to learn how to play this game. It's a simulation. We do have some control over it. If there is stuff set up for us, and it's a simulated reality, there has to be. It can't work without us. So we have to just play the fucking game.
Yeah, I mean, I believe more. I don't believe in this matrixy type simulation. I believe more in a this is where the metaphysical and the spirituality come into it too. There's no knowing what we are and why we are it. And this goes back to what I was saying about sexuality being as interesting and mysterious as the universe, because it's like at its core, like you can answer all of these questions, but you can't get to the core thing of why it exists, why it is. And
the ontology
of
being.
Of being. And also it's sexuality at its core is for reproduction, but then what happens after that? Why does same-sex attraction exist and all of that? Why, all of that. So,
the blurring is very, very interesting to me. And I think it's one last thing on it is just that I think people sometimes fall again into this trap of time being just their lifetime, but when you look at it in a big history, deep time perspective, you realize evolution is still happening. So the neurodiversity and this bodily diversity that is evolving is going in wherever it's going.
Yeah.
And so for us to just be like, this is what it's no. Wherever, we got to be open to evolution.
We got to be open to evolution, but I think what happens as we're open to evolution is that what we have to be open to, which humans are not going to be capable of, is leaving this human existence behind. Because I mean, from my understanding, like the best guess on why we haven't figured out who and what extraterrestrials or alien civilizations are is because they've gone into the data realm, and so they are existing in that type of that they exist in the realm beyond the physical being,
the multidimensional realm.
and that is fascinating, but it's not something that fucking Karen in Indiana is going to be like super jazzed on figuring out. Karen! And I was using Casey. Karen Pence as an example.
Casey.
So I.
Gotcha.
And I'm psyched about that, and that's not one that I want to. I'm recently getting into Buddhism as an understanding. I'm not calling myself a Buddhist by any means, but I'm just like, the idea of like a candle being lit, like lighting a flame and then passing the flame on through candles. While it's the same flame, it's a completely different thing. The flame on the candle down here, while it has the same complete origin and started in the same exact way, it's a completely different thing. And I think that's I'm very interested in how in that, and I would love to believe that you know, when the physical body is done, then something that at its core was the same, but is a completely different.
Well, don't
thing.
stop believing, Casey.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the way it is.
But what's great is we don't know. We do.
I do. You don't know. I know. When you're dead, you don't die. Nobody dies. There's no, get over it.
Yeah.
You're
but if you had your way,
whether you like it or not.
If you had your way, we would bust up the drug companies, and I'd already be gone. This machine would already be gone.
My way.
How dare you?
I do have my way. I'm doing the best I can. Don't worry about it. I'm going to be fine.
I think Casey
fuck me no matter
Casey
what
was
I
the
do.
first one that pointed out on the simulation question that the people that are experiencing the greatest difficulties in life not having the basic needs met are definitely not contemplating things like, are we in a simulation? Yeah, they're trying to do water and food.
Yeah.
And so that was extremely interesting. Okay, last question.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most beautiful thing in the world?
Oh, the male physical form. No, I am, you know, the most beautiful thing in the world. That's such an interesting question because it's hard for me. I can get overwhelmed by like the littlest things. Honestly, if laying in grass and looking at little bugs is maybe the most beautiful. Bugs are the most beautiful thing in the world.
That's
and if you know they're not, if you know, like I'm scared of little creepy crawly things, but if you actually look at like a tiny little insect and you see it and you're just like the intricate nature and the beauty of a ladybug, you know, is so crazy to me.
Just the way
and
the
their
wings
existence,
come off.
and their existence can be gone like that, you know. And I think you know, I get pretty overwhelmed with those little things. I'm not going to say that I don't believe in some sort of higher power or spiritual being, because the connectedness that I can feel a connection with animals. I can feel connections with insects. It's like, and this isn't even from like I do mushrooms point of view. Like I can like really, they've helped me get to that point, I think. But
they're really old. They're really old creatures in evolution. Yeah.
And it's just,
and they're really diversely different than humans.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're alien. I mean, it's a whole another alien species altogether.
They're so light that they can hang like upside down and walk upside down. They can fly with the wings.
It's just, I don't even know a lot about it. This is not something I even was like think about all the time. But like, if I really have to think about it, it's just like, I mean, you know, like a sunset is what made me fall in love with California. You know, like, I mean, I think the most beautiful thing in the world is existence. Yeah. You know. It really is, and why it is because it's complex, and there's all but also you can see it's dichotomous because it's so bad in so many ways, but when it's good, that's the thing that fills me with the most amount of joy. Yeah. And that's I mean, that's I guess the answer to the question.
Yes. And shout out to our man Michelangelo for that statue of David.
Oh boy.
Right. That is hot.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it really is the desire, the male physical form, and I mean, this is a different conversation. But the vajayjay's nice too. It's for. I mean, like I think like
the women's body is very
the physical form in which attracts you is like, you know, in all of its like delicious nuance. But the other thing is like, you know, I mean, I want masculinity in itself is not inherently bad, and you know, masculinity is under attack in a lot of ways, and I love masculinity. You know, I'm attracted to masculinity. So that's made me think about just, you know, the way in which we talk about and perceive certain things, because toxic masculinity is a big problem, but masculinity is like you know, sexy. So you know, but what does it mean? What does it mean to be one and or the other? And so
for next time,
that's a completely different topic.
But
one I really want to delve into.
We will.
Who wants to see our genitalia?
For next show.
Genitalia.
Genitalia.
Come on.
Now that was actually Jim Morrison. Jim Morrison said that back in the 60s. That, before his
Lizard King, baby.
charges. Yeah. Who wants to see my genitalia? I love that.
That's funny. That was also
Let's wrap up the show.
That was also Louis C.K.
Oh, did he say that? Right.
Yeah.
Casey, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was super
fun
fun.
On the show. Yeah, this has been a blast.
Thank you. Thank you out there.
Greatly appreciate you so much. Thank you for teaching us about the power of being open. There's a lot to take from that, shattering through those adversities, being fully open, having that loving, heart-centric energy around the world. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate you so much. Do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's build up that community. Check out Casey's links below as well. Go check out the Gay Power Half Hour podcast. Also, practice this power of open. Inspire other people in your communities to practice the power of open. Your friends, your family, on social media. Let's get to that stage, everyone. And support local artists and entrepreneurs, comedians. Support your local peeps that are really going hard on building their dreams into the world. Support them. Shout out to Ron. Thank you for producing and directing. And everyone, go and manifest your dreams into the world. We love you so much, and we will see you soon. Peace.